Hi, I'm Phil Malto and welcome to Snowmobiler Television. On today's show, we're going to be cruising in luxury with the Skiddo Grand Touring, the Yamaha Venture, and the Artic Pantera. We'll also be doing an Elka Shock swap out, and later in the show, we're going to show you how to keep those little riders warm when they're sitting on the back of your 2-up sled. Let's ride.
STV is sponsored by Yamaha, revs your heart. Kimpex, fueled by fun. And by Skiddo, never stop pushing.
The Yamaha Venture in 2016 gives upgrades that improve what it's done right for several decades. In the world of snowmobiling, there are sledders that want to see new products from the OEMs every year. There are those that appreciate the comfort and knowledge that a solid product is available from one year to the next with improvements but no major overhaul, and that is where the strength of the Yamaha Venture resides. I owned a 1997 Venture 480 with TSS suspension, and I also tested the next generation with trailing arm suspensions. Both sleds with 2-up seating were solid, comfortable performers. Since then, regardless of what Yamaha does under that nameplate, the Venture has maintained an incredibly consistent run of stellar deliveries to its owners. Today, with better seating, wind protection, 4-stroke economy, fuel injection, and an engine management system, a legendary name for 2-up touring keeps getting better. This sled is easier to run with 2 people thanks to the programmable throttle system, but you can pump up the performance curve when you decide that you and your riding companion need a little more go in your day. The Venture was a winner when it was first introduced into the market, and it has continually become a smoother, more efficient sled to operate, and in 2016, it continues to play an important role in the Yamaha lineup. Skiddo keeps the competition stiff with their always plush Grand Touring. The upgrades for 2016 keep this model cruising as a leading touring model.
Got to ride the 2016 Grand Touring SE. It comes with a 1200. Big news for the SE this year is it moves into the XS chassis. So you get the, it's still nice warm bodywork, but you get all the nicer styling and different windshield, and overall it's just a way better looking machine. The side panels are slightly wider on the 1200, so you still get good wind protection. You have the R-Motion 137 with the air ride, which is, you know, without a doubt, without a lie, and I'm not exaggerating, it is the best riding rear suspension in the industry. If you literally don't feel stutter bumps on that thing, and it's a blast to ride. One of the nice benefits on the Grand Touring this year is the new Pilot adjustable skis. Previously had the Pilot SL, really non-aggressive skis, and the Pilot TS, they let you have non-aggressive or very aggressive skis with the adjustability. So it's nice because a lot of guys that I've seen, I mean, they ride these things hard just like anybody else, and to have that adjustability and that aggressiveness in the ski, you know, when you got a lot of weight on the back with 2 passengers, that's a big benefit. So that's really nice to see on the Grand Touring, and of course it gets the ITC, and that's actually huge for touring because you can put it in eco mode when you're in tight trails, so you're not back and forth and it's not jerky on the throttle. So that's actually a really big benefit for touring, and especially if new riders or, you know, never snowmobiled, that's a great feature for it.
Artic expands their lineup this year with the Pantera, and our test riders really got to bond with the different versions of this 2016 model.
So 2016 Artic is expanding their lineup of Panteras. Last year this was a brand new model, and 2016 we're seeing the model name being attached to 2 different applications. Today we had the opportunity to ride the 4-stroke Artic twin-cylinder Series 3000 motor in the Pantera chassis. Again, this has the longer track, slide action rear suspension, Artic, the new Procross chassis. So just a fun, nice sled to drive, inexpensive to operate, inexpensive to own, and 60 mile an hour, 55 to 60 mile per hour snowmobile. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the 7000 series Pantera, which is built on the utility chassis. So you get the wide 20-inch track. Believe it or not, you can put 3 adults on this machine and comfortably ride on the trail. We did it today. Fully loaded, heated seat, heated handlebars, heated passenger grips, everything Artic Cat's known for forever on the Pantera. Fiberglass overload spring, articulated rear suspension. It's got the Yamaha 3-cylinder Genesis 1050 4-stroke engine. Completely new body styling on the front end. The super wide skis for flotation. So, if you're up in Muskoka, you're in the cottage, you're heading to go pick up some groceries, some gas, you want to throw your wife and your kid on with you, you can all pile on this thing. It's safe, it's comfortable, it's built for 3 people. And you can just go out and have a blast, attend winter carnivals, do whatever you want. So, Artic Cat is really expanding the utility market. And another cool feature on that sled is there's no more side panels where you have to, a lot of the new sleds you're seeing today, you're having to take apart the side panels to get at the clutches. You can barely even change the spark plug on it. This machine for 2016 resorts back to the old clamshell hood that, snowmobiles were known for forever. So, 2 tie downs, flip the hood up, boom, everything's there. You want to change a plug, toolbox is there, toolkit. Real simple to get at. Side panel pops open, you can change the belt. Artic is using the Team clutches, which is new for 2016 also. Artic engineering worked with Team Industries to design a new roller secondary and a new primary clutch, which has some really unique features that we can get into in another segment. But all of that goodness is on this sled. So Artic Cat has really stepped up the game. They're really putting the pressure on the competition to make a statement that, hey, 2-up touring is not dead. It's alive and well, and we have every aspect of the market covered.
We're here today doing an Elka shock install on this Artic Cat ZR600. One of the first steps we do when we're about to do a ski shock install is measure the ride height. I've just put a piece of tape here on the bumper with a pen line on it, and then I'll measure that down. And so we've got a starting point. Quite often when we're doing a shock install package, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to just show the customer or the end user the quality of the shock package they're getting. Sometimes we do want to make a correction to the snowmobile if it's nose high or if it's real low or the center skid shock is set improperly. We will fix that during the install, but this is a brand new machine. So right now we're going to just take some base numbers with the OEM shocks and replicate that with the preload on the Elka shock absorbers. Up front here we've put a piece of green tape on here with a Sharpie line, so I didn't draw on this brand new snowmobile with a Sharpie. Then we're going to push on the bumper. The snowmobile right now is on the floor, on the concrete floor, so we've got a repeatable reference number. If it's up on dollies, that allows the front to scrub a little bit better, but depending on where the dolly is placed in the back, it'll have a dramatic effect on the loading. So we've got it right on the concrete floor. So we give it a couple of pushes to allow the carbides to settle, and so that we have a repeatable reference number, and then we measure straight down to the floor. So we've got approximately 463 millimeters front bumper height. When we install the new Elka Stage 4 shock absorbers, now we have a reference number. We'll adjust the preload on the shocks until we replicate this setup for best handling. Doesn't mean the handling is the absolute best, but now the rider will be just looking at and evaluating the shock absorbers and not accidentally evaluating a change we've made to the chassis. I've just got the OEM Fox shock here on the bench and the Elka's new Stage 4 shock that we're going to install on the bench. And I always check center to center on the shock bolts during installation so that I confirm that the shock is exactly the same. The Fox float will vary its length because of the top out spring inside dependent on pressure. So sometimes it's a good idea to give it a little pull to make sure it's fully extended. Then I check the measurement so that I'm not incurring an unexpected ride height change that I didn't catch during the install. The 137, 129, 141 chassis all has a slightly different length ski shock, so I'm just making sure that I've got the exact correct product, and we do. So we're going to finish off the install now and move on to the skid. We just finished installing the two Elka Stage 4 ski shocks. We have the snowmobile off the ground, off the lift, so it's hanging. And what I've done now is back the preload collar off until the springs just go loose and the collar is spinning freely and the springs are free to spin. We call that zero installed preload. And I set the collar down and then I'm going to give it 2 full revolutions. The body pitch on the Elka shock absorbers are 1.5 millimeter. So 2 full revolutions is going to give us 3 millimeters of preload. And we find that that's a great starting point for a groomed trail rider. An off-trail rider, somebody that jumps a lot, not snowcross, but we're into a different level there, but just a rider that plays, jumps ditches, snowbanks, that kind of thing, will put probably 8, 10, 12 millimeters of preload on there to give them some more ride height, some more travel, so that when they hit the ground, you've got more stroke there in the shocks to absorb the bumps. A sled that's taller with more ski preload will be prone to rolling on a flat groomed trail. Not the shock, but the whole chassis of the snowmobile, the roll center, that kind of thing where the A-arms intersect with the weight of the engine. There's quite a lot that goes on in there. But the taller, the more preload we have on the ski shock, the chassis is going to be prone to rolling. Where with small amount of preload, anywhere from 0 to 3, 4, 5 millimeters, the chassis will sit lower, sit flatter, and the snowmobile will be able to corner faster, safer, with less body roll. So we've passed the bottom shock mount here into both shocks, the OEM shock absorber and the new Elka Stage 4 shock absorber. I do that primarily purely to check center to center, make sure everything is cool before I get it into the skid. During the install, we're going to introduce grease to the pivots. Quite often on the OEM shock absorbers, we don't see a lot of grease in the pivot bushings. We can see that this bushing came out of the shock bone dry, and they will rust. Snowmobiles are a very harsh environment with cold and warm when they warm up with friction, and that draws water into all these pivot points, and corrosion starts immediately. So it's a good idea, pull your skid apart, grease up every pivot there so that you stop the ability of the pivots to rust, and you also gain that very light bump compliance. When your pivots are rusty, it takes quite a bit of friction through a bump hit to actually initiate movement in the skid. So if you can keep grease on all of the pivot points, the snowmobile will ride better than new for long periods of time, and you'll really get your labor back doing that. the Elka shock lower pivot mount. And then we can see the imprint here from where it was already rubbing from the 3 kilometers the machine has on it, and liberally apply grease there. We use a high viscosity, it's a low temperature but high viscosity grease that really stays in there well over long periods of time. Pass it in. Just good. We've shut the rebound adjusters on the new Stage 4 Elka shock. The Stage 4 has compression and rebound. And we would never run them shut. You'll see when I push on it, it's way too slow. But it tells me that the valving, the high-speed valving inside the shocks is nice and tight and working well. So we'll give this a deep push. You can see that's 6, 7, 8 seconds for a full recovery. So we've opened the rebound fully on the shocks, the center and the rear shock. And again, we would probably never run it there either, but it's showing how quick we can get the adjustment of the rebound. So we can see the massive change from full shut to full open. And that is, as I suspected, too fast. I said we're targeting about a 1.5 second recovery from a deep push, and that's closer to 1 second. So we're in the ballpark, but I'm going to slow it down a little bit for our first ride. So we've got the skid set. We set the rebound first. The rebound has a slight effect on compression, so it's always good to set the rebound first. And then we're going to start with the compression adjusters wide open, ride the sled, test it, and then close the compression adjusters based on our feel, our input feel, and how far our tie wraps are going on the shafts. So now we're up front here. We did the same thing. We're gonna adjust the rebound until we've got that nice kind of 1.5 second recovery from a deep push that we're looking for, and use that as our starting point. So that's good there. We're set at about 15 clicks out of 40 options on the rear shock. Don't be overwhelmed by the number of options. It just gives you far more ability to really fine tune in on your target. And then the compression we have set wide open right now. So when the compression adjuster, the new Elka Stage 4 shock, has both compression and rebound adjuster as well as the preload, as we mentioned. So right now we can see that the compression is very light and very soft, and very quick, easy adjustment on the top of the reservoir to close that. So we're fully shut now, we're at full max, and I can hardly move that snowmobile. So again, we would have probably never set it that firm, but it gives us a big window to set whether we want to ride aggressively, quickly through the bumps with still that safety margin, or do we want to open them up and have a very comfortable, very compliant, slower speed kind of ride. So we have the Elka shocks installed, we have all 4 installed, and we're down here again. We're going to give the bumper a couple pushes and recheck our front ride height number. And we are right around 460 millimeters. So we're within 2 millimeters of before with the OEM shocks. So we've got a great starting point to hit the trails.
Riding with the little ones has always been a very fun aspect of this sport. Given the fact that we are outdoors in the winter and the fact that it is motorized does add some slight complexities to the day. We all know that winter temperatures can vary from day to day and even change during a day of riding. That is why it is important to dress the young ones in proper snowmobile clothing. The clothes that they wear while tumbling in the snow for an hour may not be suitable for a ride on the back of a snowmobile. Anyone who has ridden on the back of a sled knows how the wind can chill you down. The driver is doing most of the work in getting their body temperature up, while the passenger has a slightly reduced body temperature. Factor in the lack of wind protection and sometimes the lack of heated grips or seat, and the passenger can start to cool off. That is why it is important to make sure the younger set is properly dressed. The right inner layers are important because, like the grown-ups, the small fries need to be kept warm and dry. The outside layers are key to keeping the wind off them, and the accessories such as boots, gloves, balaclava also play an important role in ensuring that the younger set is warm and comfortable during the ride. Much has been said over the past years about putting a proper helmet on your child, and that cannot be understated. Nothing less than a proper helmet that meets safety standards will do. When taking a younger person out for a ride, make sure you are putting a proper helmet with a proper fit on them. Another aspect of riding with kids is where they sit on the sled. Magazine stories have been published that clearly illustrate the safety need to have the child seated behind you, not in front. There is a safety factor to consider. If you squeeze the brakes too hard, the child is caught between you and the handlebars, so there is a clear need to have them seated behind you. While most people buy single-rider sleds with no seating for a passenger, Kimpex has made the seat jack available for many models. This accessory allows you to add a proper second seat to your sled that is also removable. When you are riding with a passenger, snap it into place. When you are riding solo, you unsnap it and put it away for the day. This addresses both a safety and a comfort factor for your passenger, especially if they are from the younger set. Riding with your child is a great way to spend a winter day. It is a family outdoor experience that is timeless. To make sure that day is as perfect as possible, make sure you dress the next generation of snowmobilers with proper clothing and a helmet, and also make sure they have a proper place to sit for that all-day ride on the snow.
STV is sponsored by Ultimax Belts, performance proven, performance driven. Snowgoer Canada Magazine, Canada's snowmobiling magazine, and by CKX. Wear your passion.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. On next week's show, I'm off to British Columbia, where the entire show is dedicated to mountain riding. Remember, you can always follow our activities on Facebook, Twitter, and on our web pages. And if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll stay up to date with the latest and what's happening in the snowmobile world. Remember, you can also email me directly, phil@snowmobilertv.com. We'll see you next week back here on the snow.